Tenth man for sale or rent. Beginning of my Christian life. Out on my own now that I became a believer. Out on my own. Given the family history of the dysfunctional family, I was further out on my own now that I became a Christian, because look what happened. From here on in, it was just a matter of time before I was out on my own. I was elated about what happened at Madison Square Garden and told everyone in my family, even Pop. That just served to put another nail in my coffin that represented my being dead to my family. I went away to boarding school, then college, and then finally told to stay completely away. Mom visited me to give me birthday and Christmas presents behind Pop's back. And it was nice having her there. Sometimes I came over to do the son thing, use her laundry machines before Pop came home. Other than that, family life, what little there was of it, was over. Mom died shortly thereafter, and Pop moved to Florida to marry another caretaker. I went through the basic Bible study of the Gospel of John that Billy Graham Evangelistic Association gave me, and then there was nothing. So after a brief, frantic, and futile search for a place to learn how to grow in my faith, I rejoined the world for 27 years. There was simply no place to go that taught anything but churchianity and sermonettes for Christianettes. And I knew that, even from the basics of the faith that I learned, which was practically nothing except John 3:16. Living in Cunningham Heights was where I was banished to, a nearby city or nearby community where my parents lived a number of miles away. My first apartment was in Cunningham Heights. The neighborhood sounded impressive. I was sandwiched between Jamaica and Bayside, Queens. A 10-minute walk, one bus, and 2 subways to work. I never saw so many cockroaches. Some of them were 2-legged. One step above public housing, but the rent was affordable. Making ends meet compelled me to get a roommate, and that's where Bobby came in. He was in a brother squadron at the Naval Air Station in Brooklyn where I did my reserve duty. I interviewed with Republic Steel and got the job, and Bobby said, "Robert, you're too naive. You're never going to make it big." He was right. I also couldn't figure out why my car's gas gauge kept going down so fast. I left my car home all week. I took the bus and subway to work. One day, I came home early and found it in a different spot with the engine warm. Bobby had been using it for months. He was right. I was naive. I discovered I could pay the rent all by myself. Bobby left me hanging on the rent most of the time anyway. Some Navy buddy he was. Had to let Bobby and the car go to keep my sanity and make ends meet. Notice how far from my Christian life I had come. You really learn a lot about people when you become roommates. But I still hung on to my dream of CEO. Lost my dream of being a faithful Christian. So I go through a number of chapters. You can read about my testimony, personal testimony. Worked at Republic Steel. Was very diligent, but things are always working against you. Just at the pinnacle of success, its moment is taken away, and you're left with nothing. 27 years of that. Worked at Spiral Steel, musical chairs. Spiral Steel was one of my dealers in Republic. He offered me a job several times. I liked Herbie, who didn't. This time Herbie said hi, his Brooklyn sales rep was quitting, so the territory was open. I jumped at the offer, but the music stopped, and once more I was left standing while Hi changed his mind and sat down in my chair. "Okay," Herb says. He could convince me of anything. "How about New Jersey?" They didn't advertise there, no New Jersey phone number, no catalogs, no stock. I pay all my sales expenses, and it costs too much to deliver across the river. And worst of all, no incoming sales calls. I was 100% cold calls. I considered it for 2 days and chose a life insurance career. I was married, expecting children. A number of times I went back to work for Herbie. Perth Amboy High School. Got a big job there. I started to work on subcontract work for general contractors and got a big job at Perth Amboy, New Jersey High School. I was going to make a big commission. Guess what Herbie did? Herbie tried to squeeze more profit out of the job with one of his tricks, using non-union labor. And they got caught. And so we got fined. They did a good job, though, the two guys that we replaced him with. But guess what Herbie did? He cheated me out of my commissions by putting extra expenses on my tab, on my big job there. And so I didn't get the full commission. I practically got nothing. So much for my sales career. One disaster at a time. New Gouverneur Hospital, same thing. I got a chance to negotiate the new Gouverneur Hospital job, biggest contract the company ever won, and with huge profit. Big commission for me. All kinds of special work to do so you could charge more. It was fun finding all the suppliers to do the specialty work. The commission on this job was worth 6 months' effort. 2 problems on the job. The job super, Al, the job super, needed gas money for his Cadillac. So he wouldn't let me get on the job with using the elevators to the hospital unless I paid him for it. I couldn't get my equipment to the upper floors on the job without using the elevator. Al had his hand out all the time at the elevator door. I learned to write in free use of the elevator on the future contracts to avoid spending my commission before I got it. The very next week, Caristo Construction made headlines for taking elevator money. There were indictments and jail time involved with all involved. I couldn't imagine what it would have been like for me to go to jail just as things were starting to pick up. I wasn't doing anything wrong. The guy demanded I give him money in order to use the elevator. I was being extorted, but they didn't look at it that way. Okay, get paid for one job before you take on the next. So I got a Rikers Island job, and that was cam shot, or whatever you call it. They didn't give me enough sheets on the architect's plan, so a couple of floors were missing. So I underbid it so far, we had to get out of the bid or lose our shirt. So instead, Herbie took my commission and gave it to the general contractor to get us out of the job. So we keep on going. I get involved in the mafia and the unions, iron workers. Great 27 years. So I go on the road looking for an office furniture job. Again, the same kind of chicanery. Work for Meadart. Mike from Meadart had approached me earlier to work for him. This time I took him up on it. I got training in Chicago. I was all excited because Meadart had a good product and it was well priced, so I could make a fortune there on commissions, bidding on subcontract work, which I had learned despite all the differences and difficulties in my sales training. So it lasted 4 days in training in Chicago till my trainer was killed in a knife fight. You think somebody was up for me there? There was no one else to train me. He was killed in a knife fight. What? I hung around for the rest of the week and then picked up my brown Cutlass and drove it to Newburgh, New York. Nice car and a big challenge. Covered the 9 northeastern states. I already knew most of the product line very well, so I still was convinced and encouraged I could do stuff. But all of a sudden, phony things started happening. Big money. And I wasn't in on it. Lost all my commissions. So, what do we do now? We keep on moving on. Lost the job at Meadart. Then Meadart went into Chapter 11. Bob the Hatchet-Man got hired, yet another national sales manager on board. The ship was beginning to take on water. Bob came over from Republic Steel with a reputation for firing everything that moved. Every week someone had to go so they could meet the payroll. Commissions due were used to keep the ship afloat instead of being paid out as promised. The rule of thumb was to provoke and terminate the employee, like me, for incompetence, and then let them come and sue the company in Mississippi for back-paying commissions. So I got deceived there too. So I started working for other companies desperately. 27 years of desperation, getting close to success, and the thieves can steal from you because they do it through tricky accounting skills. All of my commissions that I was owed by Spiral Steel, that first job I got, they said, well, we're still figuring it out, and we have to get paid. As soon as you get paid, you'll get paid. I didn't see a nickel. So, Bernard Franklin Company. Now, finally, economy is going bad, recession hit. It was time to move on to California. W.W. Cannon Company, where I had my biggest success. 5-6 years of great success because the economy was booming there with the oil field equipment, and I was able to do very well. My first month's commission, $7,000. And I kept going consistently. Became salesman of the year. But then the economy collapses. All the successes, though, and the social spin-off and so on, were only fleeting. It's empty. And then all of a sudden it goes away. Just disappears. But, after a while, you have all that success, and it becomes meaningless. I think a lot of rich people, the only thing they get happy about is getting richer. Because if you stay at the same level, you're not happy. It's not enough. More is never enough. You can read all this. It's one theme, the same theme over and over and over again. I get a little more success at Cannon Company, then the economy hits in Texas to go to California, and it falls through the roof because the California there, it was in recession. So I had a lot of fun when I was there, but it became empty after a while. No relationships established. Did I go to church there? Not very often. Not very often. I remember listening to J. Vernon McGee on the radio, and I was fascinated with it because it reminded me of when I was 17. Chapter 7, Getting Back on the Path 27 years later. 13 months in California to come to an end of myself. I spent 13 months living in several places south of Los Angeles and one in Santa Ana. I started working for Davis Material Handling, then Engineered Storage Products. Still the same thing. They get you started, you set up sales, and then all of a sudden, where's your commission? Well, we don't have it. And you move on to the next thing. Actually, Davis Material Handling was in receivership. They gave me a box full of catalogs, and I made a bunch of sales with that catalogs. But when you go to see a customer, you have to leave something besides a business card. They got to know what you sell. Leave a catalog. They ran out of catalogs. That's it. I got that I was only getting one box of catalogs every 2 months. So what do I do for the next 40 days? I made a lot of sales in 2 weeks. But then you can't go and develop new customers unless you have something to leave them so they can see what you're selling. Well, I'm bringing my Riviera to L.A., Manhattan Beach. The Bruce and Judy show, that's the one where they're in Chapter 11, receivership. Okay. I came into the office to get a new supply of catalogs, anticipating even more success in the next month. That's all I can give you this year, Judy said. Wow. One box of catalogs for a whole year. We're like 30? I was actually handing out 30 catalogs in one day. You got a whole bunch of sales. He says, everyone gets 2 cartons every year. I tried to see if she couldn't provide more or a good substitute. She had nothing to give me to leave behind when I came calling. My commissions covered my draw and then some, and they were 2 of my favorite bosses, but they weren't foresighted enough. You got to eat. Who do you think you are, right? So I went to Engineered Storage Systems. Same thing. They're in financial trouble too. The whole state was in trouble. But while in California, seeing the end of my 27 years very, very soon, the whole country was in receivership. If industry isn't moving along, you can't sell industry any equipment. They're not doing very well. They're not expanding. So I was sitting in my apartment on MacArthur Boulevard in Santa Ana with nowhere to go. The Murphy bed was my desk chair, and I sat at the bookcase with a pull-out desk surface. The TV was going. I contemplated another dismal failure in my life. Leads had run out. Cold calls were worthless without leaving something with the customer. My heart completely sank as I realized I had reached rock bottom. You reach rock bottom with Billy Graham Associates.